welcome to this meeting of the Family and Children's Services Select Committee. I am Councillor Will Pascal, Chair of the committee, and I will be chairing tonight's meeting. The event is being streamed on YouTube, and members of the public and media are most welcome to watch the meeting remotely and to listen to the discussions taking place. Now I'd like to welcome all those in Committee Room 1 at Kensington Town Hall and everyone watching on YouTube. Before we proceed with the meeting, I would ask everyone present, and please make sure your mobiles and all other devices are switched off. And we will start the meeting with 72 seconds of silence to remember those who lost their lives in Grenfell tragedy. Thank you. We have apologies from applicants have been received from Councillor Sonia Sedman, Richard Durecki, Estella Gomez, and Kathleen Williams. Do we have any other apologies? Declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations of interest to make? I'll start off by saying that I'm a governor of Marlborough and Colville Primary Schools, and also governor of Chelsea and Westminster Hospital Trust. Minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of October. I think that the actions there have already been taken, have they not? Plus, and there are some ongoing things to do with the work programme, which we'll take up under that item under the agenda. So I want to make a slight change, if I may, as chair to the minutes agreed. Okay. Does everybody agree with the minutes? Agreed. Yep. Agreed. Agreed. Thank you. Thank you very much for getting me straight. There's a situation with regards to the agenda generally, in the sense that the economic development section is an important but small part of the paper we have tonight. And it involves one officer who's here. So what I'm proposing is, rather than asking that officer to sit through the whole meeting, that we take their section first. So perhaps tomorrow, if you'd like to come up to the table. And now, in the rest of the meeting, we're going to go through section by section. But if you'd like to take your subject area through from this, any general points you want to make, this year's progress that we're making with this year's budget, and then the proposals for growth and saving and capital in your area. And then I know there's a special item to do with the review you're going to do.
Yes.
Sure for that.
Thank you, Chair. And just to clarify that I've been speaking about economic development and registrars. Registrars is also part of the communities department. And with regards to where we are with our proposal around savings, for registrars, it's an income target increase in our revenue, and we are definitely on track for that. We are overachieving by significantly with regards to those proposals. And with regards to economic development, there is a savings or a proposal of £100,000. This is a savings proposal that isn't in the report because it's a savings proposal from last year that's to be realised next year. And it is part of it was originally for economic development, but it is part of the employment and skills review. So it's now part of our transformational savings program. And the review is ongoing with an implementation next summer, we hope. And this is across the council, looking at all our employment and skills offer and services across 5 directorates. There are currently 12 teams that deliver employment and skills support. That includes commissioning, contracts, direct delivery, and grants. And we're trying to have a more efficient process and a more efficient structure, and where this is feasible and leads to better outcomes, a single management structure that will lead to a more coherent approach, and also give the council a better understanding of our investment into employment and skills across the piece, and also enable us to track those who we support better, but also allow us to understand our data and our stats in terms of delivery, because at the moment we don't have a single picture of that. And so that review hopefully will lead to those different outcomes.
Thank you very much. Perhaps I could go around the table, starting with Amanda, with questions on this.
This is on, sorry, apologies for being late. This is the actual budget scrutiny.
It's the budget scrutiny paper, but we're taking the economic development and registrars part of it first.
Okay, lovely. Okay. So this is at page 13 onwards, is it?
I think it's page 26, I think.
Well,
I'm not sure.
The paper starts on page 9.
Yeah, but
It's the discussion generally of the budget starts there, and there's a mention of
Is it appendix 3 saving?
appendix 3 in the middle of it.
there is some
Page
mention.
26 in the middle.
Yes, page 26.
Okay, I
It's
don't have that.
the engineering economy
Yeah.
and skills function and increased revenue for registrars. So both of those.
Yeah, that's fine. Just want to be absolutely sure
Yes.
what you were talking about then was what I
Hold
did.
on.
Yes.
The first mention of this subject comes on page 18, number 1.29. Economic development
Okay.
has proposed saving £100,000. So you're going to have to bear with me, but you're going to have to follow through the paper as a whole, from beginning to end, just taking the last slide off. And also on page 16, there's the Q1 position at the bottom, economic development, and in table 2. In table 1, there's the budget for registrars and economic development there as well. So we're going through on this subject through the whole paper and the whole of the appendices, just taking this slice out. So it doesn't start on 26, it starts on page 16, I think.
Okay.
But if you don't want to ask a question there, obviously you can't.
I only have a question, if you're looking
Yeah,
at me
definitely,
for a question. I only had something which would be on page 17. It's incorrectly numbered. It would be supposed to be 4.24. Yes, 4.12. It's the 1.24 on page 17. They're talking about an underspend of 100,000, and you're talking about wedding ceremonies. And I do remember from another meeting I attended, I think it was the Educational Partnership Board, where we met the libraries people and they were talking about the enhanced services that this sector is able to offer, and so more demand. And as they talked about, it's all been refurbished and there's more enthusiasm for it. And I just wondered whether there had been any more work done on packages for third-party providers, because this could be quite a revenue-generating area.
Yes, there has been a lot of work done with third-party providers. We've also done a lot of work around promotions and having articles in various magazines, including Vogue. And we are refurbishing or refreshing our booking solution system. We've just let the contract, and that will enable people to virtually do tours through the rooms as well. And so we are at almost at capacity in terms of demand. So we're looking at additional spaces as well. We recently worked with colleagues in libraries, and we're using the Walker Room in Chelsea Old Town Hall. And we have started using the Mayor's Parlour as well. And we're looking to see what other venues are available. And we're thinking about how we can work with colleagues in museums, particularly Leighton House.
I was going to say, funny enough, I was thinking specifically about Leighton House, because they used to have an approved book of, should we say, 6 or 8 providers.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, if you're at capacity and the demand is there, you can start charging higher amounts from your providers, can't you? Sorry, it's very operational, I know, but just
We do have
See what we
statutory amount that we can charge.
Oh, I see.
Yes, because we're not profit making as such, even though we're generating additional income.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
fair enough. Thank you. Yeah.
That's pretty, you can ask them around that way.
I'm fine.
Okay,
Thank you.
David?
Moira, I want to ask how robust is this figure? How achievable is it? The figure of 100. And I specifically wanted to, in the narrative, second line, which aims to, third line, it seeks to, and then in the middle, the review also seeks to. Great. I'm not against that at all, but I want to know how deliverable and how robust you think this figure is. And are you going to be happy if we get 70? Or do you think actually a really thorough review might be behind the caution?
A thorough review can achieve over 100, because it's not just about refocusing some of the work. If we're bringing together disparate parts of the council into a single management structure, duplication will be taken out of the system. There are some roles that are duplicated, and the savings can be achieved through that kind of rationalization. We're not intending to change the service, we want to improve the service. And so it is a very realistic figure. This process has started, and I can already see how that figure can be achieved without any pain.
That's good, but just to go back to the general question about how robust is it, how accurate have you been historically with the savings you thought you were going to make, with how much you actually made? In other words, your budgeted savings were 100, 150. Did you actually achieve 100 and 150, or was it significantly less? In which case, we ought to be concerned that 100 is more aspirational than we'd like.
For economic development and registrars, we've always achieved the savings proposals that we've put forward. As I said, this is achievable.
Thank you. Councillor, no. Okay, Emma?
Yeah, I've got some, excuse me, I've got some questions on this one as well. So I'm new-ish on this committee. So where is this money spent? Are we upskilling people who may want to work at the council, or is this outside? I'm not really clear what it involves, because it's quite a lot of money generally that goes towards skills and employment. Where is it spent? Whereabout?
It's spent in a lot of different places, and we did a recent analysis of how much we commissioned to the sector, commissioned to its providers, and it's around £3 million across the different teams in the council. And it goes on skills and support, it goes on engagement and working with businesses and other partners to create roles.
So this is for council employees, or is this?
Are you talking just about the 100,000 where that goes, or where? Yes, generally. So it goes on staff. It goes on staff. It goes on delivering to residents that need our support. It's not normally aligned to those who are unemployed or underemployed. It also goes on supporting people to maximise their income, to ensure that they retain their tenancies and don't go into temporary accommodation. It also goes on supporting refugees in our hotels to support them into intermediate labour market opportunities, possibly, or into employment. And it also is used to support young people to access jobs as well, and apprenticeships. So it's a very wide range.
Okay. So I mean, it is really, really fundamental, isn't it?
Yes.
To people's long term.
Yes.
So I'm a little bit worried about taking any money out of it, but if you tell me this is going to be more efficient.
We can take money out of it, as I said, without any pain and without having a lesser service. In fact, we feel it's going to improve. And I know it sounds counterintuitive. It's only because of duplication.
Okay.
And people doing the same thing twice or more than twice. So if you take that out of the system and have a more efficient service, that's not going to happen. And that's where the savings come from.
Okay, so we get a report on this whole area at some point, because I wasn't clear how far spread it was.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Oh,
Thank you, Chair. Maura, my question is, so when, in terms of the savings review, we say it's a cross-council review looking, as you said, at things like duplication. Do you think there would be benefit to extend it beyond cross-council and look where we're duplicating activities that other people do that aren't council? So I'll give a couple of quick examples. So advice on starting up a small business, for example, the Federation of Small Businesses has offered that, as well as lots of resources available online. And that's only when I started my business, I went online, I found lots of resources. I found free resources out there without having to go to the council. And then another just very minor example, I noted, I was playing around on our website, and there's we have a sort of standalone website for local businesses, probably set up maybe even before Google Maps. Probably we spend very little money on it, but I imagine it still does cost some money to host it. And it's got about 30 businesses in the borough on, whereas of course Google Maps has all the business in the borough on, so more useful. So do you think it is worth looking beyond her and see where we might duplicate activities that are done by other people?
I think it is worth doing that as an exercise. I'm not sure that it would be included in this review because it is specific to it's specific to what the council does, and we have more agency in terms of what we do. I do think that, as you mentioned, the website, it maybe needs to be updated.
Or can't?
Yes, yeah. So that is going to be part of some of the consideration, because from the engagement that we've had as part of this review, and I've spoken to so many different organisations as well as internal partners, one of the key things that they've talked about is how we engage with businesses and how we do that better. And I think having that virtual space that is up to date and provides information that is needed and that businesses would like to see on our website is part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are going to make sure that within the structure there is a resource that can actually do that, which we currently don't have within our operational model.
Okay. So maybe a not as part of this review, but a sort of wider review take place, which would include those steps. Okay. Thank you.
thanks, Tom. My question is around some of the activity that's within this remit is pre-18 years old, as far as I understand.
Yes.
In other words, the age group of which this committee operates to, unless it's SEN, which basically goes along. And therefore, one of the factors that you will need to consider in your review is as to how you allocate the work in schools, for instance, because one of the ways to get people happy with working, or even expecting that they're going to have to work, is if you start at about age 2 or 3 and take it onwards through nursery and participation and helping mum or dad cook and clean and all sorts of things at home, etc. That life doesn't come as drop it off a tree. It comes by putting effort in and getting your reward back. So, because I know that the schools that I'm in, I report other schools do a lot of work in this area, particularly secondaries, but primaries and the nursery start to get part of the socialisation process. In your review, it would be useful as to who the partners within the council should be. Maybe it needs to be integrated, maybe it needs to be split into 2 halves, like pre-18 and post-18. Certainly, any child that leaves school at 16 needs to start getting work experience and apprenticeship and some route into employment once they leave school at that age. I mean, I know we strive as a borough and achieve largely that we take most of the people through to 18 and then qualifications and so on. But that area, I think, needs a bit of definition. The other thing that I understand is that part of the review will be as to whether the continuation of scrutiny after this review will actually be in this committee or in OSC. And I don't think it's up to us to make any suggestions tonight. But I would welcome a report back to this committee in whatever time is appropriate, I mean, whether it's 3 months or 6 months, when that decision is being made as to why, which one it should go to and why it should go there. And I think on one hand, it's across every department and every partnership exercise, so maybe OSC more appropriate. On the other hand, in pre-teams, I think it's more appropriate here. So I think that really needs to be solved in your review.
I think that is a fair point. On your first point around creating and post-18, we do currently work very closely, well, the team as is currently works very closely with colleagues and children's.
Yeah.
As part of the review, there were conversations with children's services and the range of teams that actually support employment skills within schools. And in fact, I think most of the delivery in terms of number of teams is in children's, and we made sure that they were part of the discussion. They're not in scope of this review, but they're part of and informing the discussion and what this looks like. And as I said, we have been undertaking some work and working very closely in partnership with colleagues in children's for a number of years. So it is very much central to what this review is going to look at and how we work with it in the future.
I think we welcome the review because with all the various partnerships with BCS and schools and partners outside like the NHS and public health, all those sort of people in business, etc. It does need a review. When it would be good to have some clarity as to which part, and maybe you choose to go in two directions. Part of it needs to be in FCS and part of it needs to be in OSC. But that still to be resolved, and I've been briefed. We welcome a report back.
Yeah.
So unless there are any other...
I'm sorry, Chair. Thank you for that. I just want to ask you something. On the streamlining of management, that means you'll have reduction in staff. So does that saving, is there a saving?
In the reduction of staff?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
And that's reflected in your figure?
It is reflected in the figure. However, I would say that reduction only comes from the fact that if you bring two teams together, there are certain roles that are direct duplicates. You cannot have the two roles in a single team, and that's where the reduction comes from. It's not from frontline delivery.
Okay.
It will be from the management structure.
You're right. Okay. So you guarantee that the services will not be affected.
Yeah, the services will not. There will not be a reduction in the number of staff in the services, because it's looking at how we work. Some roles will change. So it's not all roles are going to remain exactly the same, but where the activity is delivering well and we're getting really good outcomes, there'll be minimal changes. And having spoken about some of the kind of refocusing and doing more work with businesses and the creation of roles of jobs for residents, where there are roles that don't quite align to that, there will be amendments to those roles so that they align to what we want to achieve with employment and skills going forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Mary, Councillor Wheeler, would you like to answer a question on this?
Thank you.
Are you happy that we post the review? We have a discussion within scrutiny as to where it best fits.
As to where the what?
As to where it best fits.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that comes out of your review.
Yes.
So thank you very much indeed. I think that we are waiting for the review. We've challenged the savings and been confident that you can achieve those. And when you've redefined your audience or audiences and where you're going to pull them, and I tell you, there's 18 places in the council that this actually touches on. 12.
Yes.
Yeah. But if you bring that closer together, it's probably much better coordinated. So welcome the review, and we'll then work with you in whatever's most appropriate way in scrutiny. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Okay, so if we could now move on to the main body of we have one main paper tonight, obviously, and it's the same papers we've just been looking at, but it's scrutiny for the 5.6. So, if I could whilst everybody's getting themselves organised, if I could first of all apologise for the fact that the papers that have been published have got some numbering difficulties. So as I think Amanda already started the process, if we could mention both the number and the page when we're referring to a clause, and I think we'll probably be at the same place in the script. This report provides detailed equivalent services budget, including 24-25 outturn, draft 25-26 growth, savings proposals, and also capital. It also features the Directorate's approaches to transformation of service efficiency and enabling better outcomes at reduced costs in view of financial headwinds. We've been through the registrars that kind of covered. I think the next thing to say is that we are aiming to produce a report as FCS to the both to the budget working group and overseeing scrutiny, but we'll be done in parallel. The report will go normal processes. It goes to takes the budget working group and a lead member of the leadership team sequence, but there is not the programme time between now and the budget process in January and February to do that. So the report, what will happen out of today's meeting is there will also be minutes of the meeting. And if we make recommendations, those will be built up into the report, and then that report will go to in parallel to the lead member and also to budget working group OSC, which is chaired by Willie Hutt. So that's the process thing. I'd like to welcome tonight Catherine Fuchs, who's the member of Family Children's, Sarah Newman, Executive Director of Children's Services, Annabelle Saunders, who
Annabelle's not here.
She's not here.
No.
Right. I was
Just
sorry.
me.
Right. Okay. And we also have Anita Stokes, and I'm at, if I pronounce correctly, I'm sorry if I make wrong pronunciation, from the finance side. Kim Taylor-Smith gives his apology, and Moira has already spoken tonight, so that's the introduction. Now, I think that we've all read the report, so we don't need a presentation, but I would like to ask Catherine if you'd like to give sort of key points you want to emphasise.
Well, I think I thank officers for producing this paper. I think it's very clearly set out. And as you will see, we do produce savings in both this year and the next year of just over £1 million. But we also have budget pressures of about £1 million too. So although we've done our best to produce savings, I think and the transformational approach, which I think is really exciting, some of the things that we're doing to try and head off the ill winds that are coming our way. But as we can see, managing demand in point 1.1 onwards, I mean, it's really quite alarming how the demand is going up. And it's all in the paper, so I won't go through it one by one. But what our major concern is, of course, is that we don't want to produce savings that might impact on the services that we have for our children. And that's what we have to carefully balance. And we've had to ask for the indulgence maybe of some of the other portfolios in the council to let us not make further savings that we were asked to do, because they also understood how important it was that we don't reduce our services for our children, who we think it's really, really important that we maintain them and maintain the excellent standard that we have in this borough. So that's a very brief sort of overview, and I'm sure you'll have very detailed questions on particular points that you'd like to ask us.
If I could start off with a more general point, because I wanted to ask three questions that interlock. FCS has responded to the challenge that the Budget Working Group put out last January, February, and was agreed by the leadership team of the council to look very strongly at transformation process, i.e. to improve the efficiency of what they do, provide better services in the face of financial headwinds. And I wanted to paraphrase Ofsted's approach to looking at the way in which policy, budgeting resources and outcomes are measured. And those of us who've been through Ofsted recently know that they do this pretty rigorously, and it's pretty a well understood process. So to paraphrase it, it goes under the headings of intent, implementation, and impact. And I wanted to ask Sarah, if I may, a couple of questions on that front. I hope that Annabelle's passed on to you the answer that she's already given to me. But basically, the first question is, how do you ensure that your policy intent is aligned to the borough's council plan?
Well, I think we do that through the Children and Young People's Plan. It's a 3-year rolling plan. We co-produce it with children and then absolutely look at how it aligns with the council plan. There are 7 priorities for Children and Young People's Plan. I did write them down somewhere just to remind myself, but it is best start ensuring that children have access to good learning opportunities. It's ensuring that children have a voice, transition to adulthood, being safe, and I think it's being healthy and happy.
Right. That second question is, what evidence do you have of the effect of transformation affecting the budget, yielding efficiencies? Because to be fair to you, I don't know whether Annabelle did pass this on. I asked her the question of, over the last 2 or 3 years, what the effects of the transformational work that you've already been doing in terms of numbers. And I mean, you know, that's the question.
So since 2020, 2021, we've removed 6.5 million from the budget as a result of transformation work. And our outcomes for children have not been impacted by that in terms of educational outcomes, outcomes for children with SEND, and what we're seeing in children's social care in terms of repeat protection plans, the numbers of children coming into care, and the outcomes that we achieve for our care leavers. I think everyone's aware that Ofsted has just visited us. And I think whilst the reports aren't published yet, I think we can say that over the last 10 years we have sustained an excellent service, which we outline our ambition to do in the Children and Young People's Plan.
Well, we're all hoping that you get outstanding at that, but we might need better wait for a formal. But the point there is that you started transformation processes a long time ago.
We did.
And that you have not cut money out of the budget. You've actually improved service whilst reducing the cost. So that's an improvement in efficiencies. And therefore, as you say, the 6 million plus that would be an additional cost if you hadn't done that transformation service or the same outcomes. It'd be 6.5 million every year. And that would be built structurally into the budget. And if you were then faced with budget pressures in the future, you'd have to make, if you didn't do transformations, you'd have to make cuts of services as a result. So I think that, you know, we need to shine a light as a select committee on the fact that this is a very select. The third impact question is to do with how do you measure the outcomes of the work that you achieve in terms of the quality of that.
Right, that's a really good question. I mean, we have a number of key performance indicators across children's services, but that only tells one part of the story. What we also have is a quality assurance framework where we sit down next to our staff, get them to show us the evidence of the work that they're doing, which they record on a filing system, and then we speak to key stakeholders and to service users about their experience of the service. I think there are always 2 important indicators for us. One is repeat referrals and 2 is repeat protection plans, because obviously what we don't want families to be subject to lots of plans, particularly in social care. So they're 2 key indicators that we keep a regular monitor of. And, you know, across all of our indicators, we perform better than national averages and generally better than the London averages. The key indicator that always we always struggle with is stability of placements for children in care. And that's because we have such a small number who meet with the indicator requirements, that it always looks worse than it actually is. But when you drill down to the actual numbers, it's a very small number of children.
So those three questions together, the intent, the implementation of the impact, would mean that you have a process, a structure by which you set forth, and then you measure the results, and you measure obviously the costs, efficiencies. You strive to improve, but does that also inform how you feed into updates to the council plan going forward?
Absolutely. I mean, we have a quarterly report against the Children and Young People's Plan, which includes not only the indicators that are relevant to the priority outcomes, but also keeping account of our workforce stability, starters and leavers, and budget.
In summary, I'm going, when we come back to recommendations here, I'm going to propose that we as a committee, and I want you to think about this while we're talking about other things, come back to this and make a recommendation that this structure and process, which looks at intent, implementation, measuring results, then feeding back to policy intent again, is a continuous business improvement process, which we have chapter and verse case history and money saving, whilst getting national standards for quality outcomes. They would therefore seem to be a structure that ought to be adopted in those parts of the council which are not doing this at the moment. And that would be a recommendation from us as the S2 OSC, the budget working group. So now I'd like to go, shall I go around the other way this time? Tom, would you like to start off?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, a few questions, so I'll just ask.
Can I just say that let's go through this report. General questions first, and then we'll go into, I think, general questions and this year's outturn first we'll take together.
Okay.
And then we'll go around the table again to do with growth and savings.
I'll ask my big general question then.
Please.
And that's, so it says, I think in 6.2, page 17, that once you exclude, even when you exclude unaccompanied asylum seekers, numbers of children looked after has increased 16% since the start of 23-24. 16%. And also in Appendix 2, page 21, where it talks about demographic pressures, or maybe page 22 actually. Yeah, so the last one goes between 21 and 22. We say number of care leavers is expected to increase 37% year on year. So those are two huge numbers. Looked after children going up 16%, and care leavers going up 37%. What's driving that? Is that going to keep on happening? Because if it keeps on increasing at that rate, we'd never be able to afford it.
To answer that.
I can start and then you can fill in. I mean, the number of people coming into care is partly just what's happened to COVID. I mean, just, domestic violence, domestic abuse in the home. I mean, a lot of pressure on families, too many overcrowding. I mean, this has unfortunately pushed more of the children into care, which is, really upsetting to see that number has increased so much. And as it says clearly in this paper, this is a cohort that we don't get any extra funding for, unlike the unaccompanied asylum children. But for the care leavers, this is the, as we've said, it's a huge amount. It's 7,000 about per care leaver that we are underfunded to pay for their accommodation, which if you add that up with the number of care leavers we had is about 900,000 a year. So this is just on those two things highlighting why we've got that, that demographic pressure, about 1 million.
70% of our looked after children are 14 plus. So actually they move into care leaver status very quickly. The other thing is a significant number of our care leavers remain supported by us up until 25. there's always the intention of government that councils offered additional support for those care leavers 22 to 25. I think their estimates were that 13% would take up that offer. Virtually all of ours take up that offer. Now, we're not providing lots of monetary support, but actually it's still a cost pressure, and it's something that we're recognised as doing really well. We know that care leavers are very vulnerable. You know, there's lots of national statistics about looked after children and care leavers being overrepresented as homeless and in the criminal justice system. So for us, it's really important that we're able to provide good quality support. But cost of living crisis has meant that there's a higher number of families experiencing mental health issues, and Catherine said domestic abuse. That is meaning that we're seeing our looked after children numbers from our local population go up. And then, of course, the more looked after children you've got, the more pressure you've got in terms of care leaver support.
So we don't think, well, don't know, but we don't think these large percentage increases will continue year on year.
They could do. I mean, you know, part of our transformation has always been to manage demand as best we can. We think we've got the system right in terms of our early help offer, those families we support into social work, but as children in need, rather than escalating through the process into child protection and then becoming looked after. I'd like to think that as we're coming out of the cost of living crisis and people find a new normal after COVID, that those numbers will start to come down again. Per 10,000, we are still very low.
Okay.
But also, I think all the work we're doing in early help to actually make sure people signpost them to make sure that they are getting help, that we're intervening at a much earlier stage so we don't get to that position. So that's just a really important piece of work they're doing.
The other bit to say is actually our looked after children numbers have gone up because court proceedings are the court process is taking double the amount of time that it used to take, which means actually we're not seeing as many children move through the system and back into permanence as quickly as we used to.
So it's family court, stay with an adult,
9 months
stay with
delay.
the grandparents.
Absolutely. Yeah, we are leading the Trailblazer programme across London to see how we can reduce those delays.
Okay. Good to hear.
Would this be an appropriate moment? Because one of the questions I had was if this is to do with the Mockingbird model, is that?
So
Is that a different thing?
Mockingbird tends to be foster care. Yeah.
So it's only that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fine.
But it's a really good approach to fostering. It's wrapping support around foster carers so that we improve stability for looked after children.
Okay, so since you've indicated we're going around that way this time. Okay, Pretty.
Okay. Well, I have a question.
Sorry, you've got an additional question you want to get.
Well, I'm not quite sure whether, I don't know if that was a general question. I don't quite know if it was a general or a specific question. Can I just ask a question?
Yes, of course.
It's page 14 on 113, which is about the Mockingbird model. And it all sounds lovely to sort of speed up delays, etc., and use this model, which obviously I don't know or understand. And I just wondered how this provision is overseen. So that we ensure the children are safely cared for and appropriately cared for.
So we still have a fostering service on a 3-borough footprint with Hammersmith and Fulham and Westminster. We want to make sure that our fostering service is competitive, that our foster carers feel well supported, and that they're financially reimbursed in accordance with the fantastic care that they provide. Mockingbird is a recognised national model for providing additional support to foster carers so that they are more willing to take on those children with particularly challenging behaviour, which then avoids them going into the residential care system.
Okay, so it's our existing, I thought it was other foster carers using this model, therefore I was concerned that
No. So it's a way of recruiting more foster carers into our system and to encourage some of our existing foster carers to look after some of the more challenging children because we're wrapping additional support around.
Thank you. And I've got 2 more questions on 1.15 and 1.16 on page 15. Do you want me to ask them now or do you want?
No, keep
Okay.
it short.
It will be short. So in 1.15, we're talking about the 24 specialist welfare placements for the highly vulnerable children, which typically cost 500,000 per annum per year on spot purchase in the open market. And I just sort of wanted to interrogate that number a bit and what are they costing now? So you've sort of bandied around that figure, but you know, are they costing us 499 or are they costing us 50? You know, and then the second question I have in 1.16 then is we're talking about the overall saving of 500,000 there, and then this investment of 2.5 million to expand the offer to create 12 more placements for 12 more care leavers. What's the annual saving there? You know, these figures just don't mean anything.
So on the first thing with 500k per annum, and some of the children can cost a lot more than that. So some of those who've got really sort of difficult issues that have to be coped with. I mean, we've got a couple at the moment who are quite substantially more than that per annum, which is why we committed to building a secure home. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be anywhere on the near horizon, does it? I don't know if they've even found a building.
We've got a site.
We've got a site, but you know, but it's still in that a bit of the way off. But you can see how important it would be to have that and to have cheap places to put on children. In terms of the buying the flat, so this is a classic spend to save. So it's 2.5 million coming from a capital budget to purchase a flat, which over the long term will produce that saving. So it doesn't obviously produce the saving immediately, but it will over that, over the long term period. If we've got 12 of our care leavers that can go there, that potentially is, my math's not very good.
Okay, so we'll get the proper figures in the future.
Yes, we'll get it. Yes, we don't obviously get it. It sort of has to play out over.
Understood. I didn't understand.
Okay,
that was imminent.
Yes.
Sorry. Thank you. That's what I wanted to ask.
Bridget.
With my questions have been asked, but I'd like to expand a bit further. So, question for you, Sarah. The 6.5 million that has been, which congratulations on, you know, if that saving has been made, which is brilliant. Can you just remind me how long back?
2020, 2021.
Okay, right, okay. And since then, we have made this saving since then, annually.
We've had 100% success rate on our savings year on year. I think that's right, isn't it? You're going to tell me I'm over exaggerating now.
I think we might have, there might have been like a few minor differences, but you know,
When
we largely met them. Yeah.
Right, and you feel pretty confident that that system can carry on.
Yes.
We're confident in the savings that we put forward in this paper. I think as we move forward, it's going to be more and more challenging for us to make savings without compromising the quality of our service, because the only place that we have to go left for savings is staffing.
Yes.
And, once you start taking staff out, you increase caseloads. Once you increase caseloads, people start looking at going elsewhere, which compromises the stability of the workforce, which then compromises the quality of the work.
Sure, right. And what about management?
So we, in order to take out 6.5 million over a number of years, we have taken out management posts. So we've taken out director posts, we've taken out head of service posts. The last place we're going, and part of the proposed savings this year, is our Children with Disabilities service, which we're going to create a by-borough service, which will mean we can save costs on management. But I have to say, that Catherine and I have had lots of discussions about what else we might do by borough. My experience of the latest inspection was it was forensic and it was technical, and I probably would not be recommending that we do much more on a by-borough footprint. I think we've probably got the right approach in that the social care teams, and that's early help as well as social work, remain a sovereign service so that they can focus on the local children.
Okay. Now, I just have the other thing I wanted to ask you was, going back to Catherine, the point you made about we have some very, cases which cost, the childcare costs a huge amount of funding. So going forward, do we have any inclination that we could get more funding for it, or will it be will we be the ones who will be?
Well, we laugh slightly.
Yes.
Probably no. I mean, I can't see how we would.
We did talk in the Educational Partnership Board, didn't we, with evidence bases to show what reductions might cause for the children, that we might lobby very.
And we can do lots of lobbying.
DfE,
We can do lots of, but then that's as far as we can go is lobby in all sorts of areas in children's services that we'd be lobbying for more money. Yeah, yeah.
The cost of care is rising.
Yeah.
Yes.
The placements for 16 and 17-year-olds are now regulated by Ofsted, which has reduced the market by 20% and increased the costs accordingly. Costs are rising and rising. It's not unusual to be paying £17,000 a week for a child in care. Exactly. So it's really important that our investment is in early help, so that actually we are preventing need from escalating. Once we're looking after children, the costs accumulate very, very quickly. Again, while Mockingbird is such a good programme, because it's about supporting our local carers, and we can control the cost of our local care provision much better than we can the independent sector, which is rising and rising and rising, particularly when it comes to residential placements.
Right. Okay. And Chair, I'll be very quick. Just last one. On page 17, I just have a very quick question. Point 6.2. The sentence: the council receives funding from the Home Office for UASC. Whose numbers are said, out of that million, what part is, do we have what proportion of that is?
So really interesting. So our God, it sounds dreadful. Every local authority is given a quota based on their population size of how many unaccompanied asylum-seeking children they ought to look after. And ours, I think, is somewhere in the region of 26. And the Home Office give us funding for those 26 children to pay for their care and towards the cost of the social workers supporting them. The Home Office don't give us money for the children we look after from our local population. And it's those children from our local population whose numbers are rising as a result of the cost of living crisis and post-COVID, rather than the unaccompanied asylum-seeking numbers.
But on that point though, I mean, on 6.3 with the unaccompanied asylum, there is the shortfall of the funding.
Particularly when it comes to care.
Exactly, when it comes to care leavers. Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Now, you gave this figure that Pretty talked about 6.5 million over the last 4 years of transformational savings that's been made. You also suggested that there wasn't much more scope for similar savings in the future to be made.
Yeah.
You also said that a number of costs are rising very significantly.
Yeah.
So how sustainable over the medium term is your budget? As how much scope is there for future savings that do not go as far as cutting frontline services?
Yeah, I think that's where we're going to. Struggle. And I think, David, my recommendation to Catherine will always be to preserve the front line, and that's our staff supporting children with SEND, making sure that we're doing the EHCPs in a timely way. I think we're one of the only boroughs achieving anywhere near 100% of EHC assessments on time. And the problem is if you start stripping away the front line, then you undermine our ability to provide a timely and effective response, which then undermines the confidence that families have in us, which then leads to escalating costs because actually more children get pushed up the sort of triangle of need. So
I am absolutely on your side.
I know you are.
But I'm just concerned that too much is going to be asked of you. That it's going to result in what you're concerned about.
That's what I think where I was getting to was once we've preserved the front line and their managers, because actually those frontline staff need to be supported properly in order to hold risk and deliver an effective service. You know, we're then into the one place we've got, I guess, uniquely, which is our operations and transformation team. But if we strip those staff out, then we lose our ability to do anything transformational in order to realise savings through, a digital programme, looking at AI and whether that can help with some of our quality assurance processes. So there'll be things that we can do around the edge. There'll be an option to say, do we want to take these staff out and accept that we won't be as transformational as we've always been? But I mean, my recommendation would always be to protect the front line. And, you know, look at if you look at our structure, it's half of me, 2 directors, and I think it's 8 heads of service. That's it for KNC. Half of me, 2 directors, and 8 heads of service. When you, I shouldn't do this, but I can't help myself now.
Go on.
I think we're the most slim service of all of the directorates in the council, and yet I would argue that we're properly transformational and we're achieving some excellent outcomes for children.
And can I think it's appropriate to add here, I am staggered by how very dedicated the whole team is. I mean, I come to that many evening meetings, which, you know, I know how much I don't like them. So, and yet you guys are always here, you're always prepared for them with a smile on your face, and you're always answering things thoroughly and brilliantly. And thank you to everybody who does that in each of these meetings.
I think we all do.
They are brilliant.
Sarah, I'm on your side as much as I can be, but I just want to.
Try and be the good guy.
No. You allowed me to answer in a way that
we should be concerned about in 2 years' time. The answer is we should actually be quite concerned about 2 years' time.
But I don't know if this is time, Anita. I mean, you can. Of course, we have got a bit of a time bomb coming down in our budget, which is the deficit that we're holding in our special needs that we've been pulling it down. So far it's been kept off the budget line, but it's 2026 end of 2026 this figure, which was about 3.6, I don't know what it is now, million.
it's just over 4 million.
So 4 million, which we have a deficit on us, it will. So, you know, we'll come back and sit on this budget.
In terms of the risk, I think it is a significant risk.
It is.
Because of the, I'm going back to your original question. I think the 4 million, we've got a very good plan with Schools for Schools in terms of how we deal with that deficit and reduce that deficit in a manageable way. But in terms of the risk to children's funding, because of the increased pressures and the things that, you know, Sarah and Catherine have said, what can we have control of, and doing what we can. I think we can see that the pressures are increasing more than future savings, and that's not just here, is it? That's the national. So I think it's
specifically on the rising need for supporting the SEN and SEND.
And families.
And families
there's a great ITV article. Lewisham Social Services allowed ITV staff to spend some time with them, you know, that it's the demand following COVID with the cost of living crisis into children's social services has risen.
Can we hold that thought? Because that is a very important thing which we'll come back to at the end. So can I move on to Councillor Nair, please?
Thank you, Chair. I've got 3 short questions. Shall I say one by one or just one go on?
Just keep why don't you ask all 3 of them?
Okay, we'll do that.
I think they go together.
So we're on page 13, 1.6. The question is, we had over the last year 85% increase on child protection cases. That's from 48.
Did you say page 13?
1.5.
1.5.
Yeah, 1.5.
Got it. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, child protection plans have risen significantly, and they were probably at a very low base, and we're now much more in line with other local authorities. But, I think we would like to see that number come down and to be supporting more families as under the Children in Need framework.
And your next question?
Thank you. And my next one is the proposed creation of the Baibara Children with Disabilities Service in combination with the short breaks. So is this have to already consulted or to be consulted with the families?
Yes, we absolutely have done that in consultation with the Parent Carer Forum, with parents using our service and with staff themselves. Absolutely. The Children with Disabilities team in both boroughs is very small. And so actually by creating a by-borough service, we build resilience because it'll be slightly bigger. So we think that's a good thing to do. We want to ensure that our children with disabilities pathways is as accessible as possible. We have got some duplication in the system and some inefficiency. We've got a really good idea of where that is, and therefore we think we can make some savings as a result of making the service much more efficient and a more streamlined pathway, which is absolutely in accordance with what parents say they want.
Yeah. And can I just add, actually, only as I was at St Quintin's yesterday, what an amazing facility it is to have in this borough. And the staff that work there said, do you realise that you haven't got facilities like this other than in Westminster? No one else has a centre like that with staff like they have. And I was actually there because we were opening a cinema for them, which was just incredible and so wonderful. But that all again is about learning to help them move on to independence. So they're going to learn how to buy the ticket to get into cinema, and it really is. I don't know if you visited it, but it's just such a wonderful centre, and the staff are just so happy to be working there.
And Curzon Cinemas are really good employers for young people with SEND.
Yeah.
Thank you. Chair, my last question is on 1.29. That's a saving on North Kensington Library. Nottingham Library, 167,000.
Yeah.
You say the staffing and building. So can we get a bit of clarification on that?
Yeah. So the building is actually closed at the moment for repair. And whilst it's closed for repair, we don't need any staffing in there. Sure. So there's the saving.
Okay, so that's all 3 questions.
I'm done, thank you.
Okay, Emma.
Thank you. Yes, I've got 3 questions all on a theme.
Okay.
Been hearing some amazing rosy stories here, and gold stars all around for things that we're doing well. Where do our appalling level of school exclusions fit into this? It is absolutely appalling how many people, and these are people that I know, and I'm sure Lucky knows a lot of these young people as well.
Yeah.
They do end up in jail. I mean, I know people who have been started from they've known their whole life basically.
Yeah.
They have some wobble at school or a secondary transfer maybe.
Yeah.
They don't always get the EHC plans because often schools, excuse me, they refuse to put them through that, and they just say they're just being naughty. And are these people that I'm now talking about? And so they struggle at school, and then they misbehave, and then they're sent to, they're suspended or excluded. Sometimes they're off-rolled into other boroughs. And so they're no longer our problem, they're no longer on our strengths. And as part of that, the third part of that is cutting any even a penny of our youth offending team. And I'm really, really worried about that. We've had 3 murders, 3 attempted murders, and a stabbing yesterday just in Golborne Ward. It's getting really scary. I don't know any of these people involved, but I do know that trajectory. I've seen it over and over again. I'm sure Abdullahi with his day job has seen that as well. This really frightens me. So we're clearly very, very good at some things, But school exclusions we are not dealing with, and it's shameful actually.
Yeah.
And we know that is literally we're pulling the plug on those young people.
Yeah. So I'll
And-
start and then we can follow. In fact, we discussed this at Andrew's there, the education. I mean, I think the whole point about this is it's the nuance and actually looking at the data and picking it down. So people keep saying that. I think at the moment we've got about 9 permanent exclusions. We have very, very few. We have lower than average permanent exclusions in this borough. And this is what people don't understand. We have such low numbers. We have a high number of suspensions, but the numbers that we receive are often repeat suspensions. And the key thing about suspending a child is it's much better to give a child a short, sharp wake-up call to say, you're not, this isn't working in your school. We'll put you out of school for a bit of time in the college, have some focus thing, and then we'll put you back in school. Now, we'd rather do that than permanently exclude them.
I have never heard that happening, Catherine. Mum's
And
told me
well, Emma,
all the time, and they said my
provide
child
the
was going to be there
evidence.
for a few months, and they've been there for 2 years or whatever it is.
No,
This is
that's
what people
we
who come to
can
us.
bring you the evidence paper that we brought to the board yesterday with the actual numbers, with the demographics of the actual numbers. And actually, you know, one thing you've got, you know, it really we keep getting this thrown at us, but actually the nuance is, you know, you really need to look at what the numbers are and what's happening to these children. Now, the key thing is that, you know,
It's young people that I know, you know, like,
well, that they're being suspended or they're being excluded. I mean, do you know some? I promise you,
I
we've worked so hard.
So
there are some
can I intervene here and
distinctions.
say that as far as
We
I
can
mean,
bring
so
the
there's
data, or
there's
you can have what you
there's
think.
two things that are very important. First of all, we must not stray into discussing or even implying individual cases.
Exactly.
That is, you know, we must not do that. That's not the place for the scrutiny to do it. These are confidential, highly confidential issues to do with individual vulnerable people. So that's the first thing I want to say. The second thing I want to say is that it's very good to have the question asked. But the decision that we collectively need to make in budget context is as to whether this requires a further discussion with further input, which is not strictly budgetary as such, and that therefore would the best thing for this be for you to be briefed by officers on this subject, or for us all to be briefed on officers as an information paper?
Well, may I just give a little reassurance to Councillor Dencode on this, because sadly we have had some permanent exclusions from 2 schools that I've been involved with. With primary schools, what is very successful in this borough is actually with a term of out placement in one of the alternative provisions. They then are very successfully reintegrated back into school. And one child that I sadly had to preside over an exclusion from primary school has actually ended up at the school that I'm involved with at secondary, and I happened to notice the child and is having a successful transition. So that's one thing. Secondly, whenever you permanently exclude a child, you then will come before an independence review panel, and you have to, as a school, justify exactly what is done. So absolutely, you cannot avoid off-roading, because the independence review panel and advocates on the other side will interrogate what has happened to various children within your school. If the statistics would include off-roading, that would come out, and it is illegal. And as far as I'm aware, it's not happening in our school. Secondly, it's very, very clear that very, very well established that permanent exclusion really is a last resort, having considered managed moves. And I know certainly the secondary heads have agreements as between them that if they can no longer keep them in their own school, there'll be a managed move as far as possible to another school after a period of re-establishment of certain guidelines, should we say, at alternative provisions. So if the child accepts what they've done was wrong, within 6 weeks, they can be back in mainstream schooling.
Okay, I mean, the whole issue about managed moves. I'm coming to this point because we're cutting, you know, a small amount, maybe it's one post out of youth funding, which is, you know, the final stage of this trajectory, really. But the parents are often pressured to accept a managed move because it doesn't go on there.
Can
Oh,
I
yeah,
ask
yes.
a question? There is nothing in our savings proposals that impact on school attendance, school suspension or school exclusion. I'm very happy to have a conversation outside of this meeting, but I think we are here to deal with the budget and not to deal with that. I can answer the question in relation to youth offending team because actually we spend significantly above what we get from the Youth Justice Board in terms of grants, and because our caseloads are so low, and actually we can afford to take the post out, given actually our youth offending, our first time entrant numbers is coming down, as is our reoffending rate. So actually we think that we can reduce, and it is a very well resourced team. So we think we can take that out safely.
Having said that, I think that this subject, as we've had long discussion in the scrutiny committee on the exclusions previously, and I think it's something that we want to bring back to the scrutiny committee, so not in the context of budget. Having heard your answer, I think you may disagree with what Sarah even has said, but she has assured us that that team is well enough resourced to do the job which it needs to do.
So we're failing them. We're failing these young people. At some point, somehow we're failing them.
I think the point in relation to the incidents, so like the in relation to a lot of the serious youth violence incidents, that actually young people aged 18 to 25. Rather than the under 18.
They weren't always.
They're not always.
They weren't always that age. They were younger then. And many of them have been excluded from school. And that's just the statistic.
Absolutely. But what we do, I think I'm just going to get it. What we're doing now in the whole space around support for children is very different to what we were doing 10 years ago. So actually, what we're seeing right now is the impact of things that we weren't doing 10 years ago. We've invested in lots of services, and actually we are seeing first-time entrants and repeat offender rates come down significantly.
Thank you.
And if I say, I'd really welcome, because this subject seems to be
it's an important subject.
It's a subject that is very misunderstood of what we're actually doing. And I would really like the opportunity to bring the data forward for everyone to see, and to see what we're doing to actually prevent.
We have a work programme agenda item later in this meeting, so I think that we went pretty full up for the next meeting or so. But we maybe need to address when school exclusions.
So we looked at exclusions quite recently, so we perhaps at the end.
But it's not just exclusions. I think what Emma says it's to do with, and what I want to say in addition to that is that I think that we might get some input from you on how much earlier interventions.
Of course.
Because that seems disproportionately cost effective.
Absolutely. We all know that the spend on the 0 to 5s saves lots and lots of money down the road.
Yeah. Okay. So can we move on to that? I think we've made the point. I think we'll return to the subject, but not under the budget heading. So in terms of where we go next, I think we've discussed the existing year and the general points. So if we could just quickly go through the specifics in the appendices. If you could look at Appendix 1, which relates to the growth figures, I believe. Appendix 2, sorry, Appendix 1 was this. Appendix 2 on page 21. So on the specific things, I think I'm just going to go through the page, and anybody would like to, on the page 21, on those 4 items there, anybody want to, David?
I just want to ask, line 2 and line 3, salary savings, this is from Appendix 1. Salary savings are
we're on Appendix 2.
Appendix 2.
Sorry.
We've already done 2.
Well, I want to ask a question on Appendix 1. Salary savings across children's services, 420. Additional staff savings, 200. Why are they separate? Not bundled together.
So they're savings we've already proposed and we're already delivering.
Okay. Yeah, this is work in progress, not budget proposals. We're trying to get onto budget proposals. So I think that's being delivered, is what we're saying, right? So Appendix 2, 4 items on page 21.
Yeah.
Don.
Yeah. And so Just two quick questions. First, what is virtual school and why has the grant been decreased? And secondly, the North Kensington SJA, okay, that's a capital cost, but will it have ongoing costs thereafter? Operational costs.
Right, okay. So in relation to the virtual school is a school for our looked after children, where our looked after children are in real schools, but the virtual school takes an overview of all of their educational needs and ensures that plans are in place to ensure they achieve their full potential. We used to charge money for the virtual school to the dedicated schools grant, but unfortunately the rules have changed and we can't charge as much as we would like to.
And
to the
and the
DSG.
DFE, the policy is that part of this bit of funding in the DSG reduces by 20% each year.
Yeah.
So it's creating a gap.
That'd be a stupid question. We can't rebadge it as something else.
No, unfortunately,
break it down
we're
as
not
small
allowed.
as-
No, we're not allowed to do that.
And then North Kensington Social, is there an operational cost as well as a capital cost?
Yes, there is a revenue cost, and that was put forward in the paper when we proposed the North Kensington Social Justice Archive.
And is that, sorry, the 140, I'm being silly here, is that a capital cost or is that
No, that's the ongoing.
So that was the
Ongoing.
annual.
There's a 140 per annum.
And
Yeah.
I've heard about it before, but no one's actually ever explained to me exactly what it does. What do we get for the 140 per annum?
So that's about managing the archive once it's been.
Well, yeah, well, what is it?
So the archive is an archive that came from the Friends of North Kensington Library. And after they saved the library, and they had a whole campaign about that, and then Grenfell happened. And what they want to do is bring all the information, not just from Grenfell, but actually about the whole history of the area.
Can I say this is coming to our next committee? So
Okay, well, I was just answering quickly.
Yeah.
I
So
know.
that's what
Okay.
it's about. So
It's an annual cost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get more detail when it
Yeah.
comes to the paper.
Yeah.
So sorry to interrupt.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So moving on to appendix 3, saving up proposal. I know a couple of you wanted to tell them how robust these were, so please speak.
Or too long to go again, yes. No, just the first one, we're capitalising cost of business support. We're saying that it's actually we've created an asset here. What is that asset that we've created?
So we get money for free school meals, and we'll take some of the money that we get for free school meals to pay for the cost of actually running the system to ensure that children get them.
I'm not sure that's.
Oh, is that the right one?
Good,
Sorry.
right.
So that's where we've got members of staff that their whole work is based on capital programs. So they're because their role is specifically on various of our capital programs for children's, that means that we can charge part of their salary that relates to those specific capital programs to capital. So it's no longer a cost to revenue.
So if some money was spent on a school, capital expenditure, the management costs associated with that project will be capitalised within the project.
Yes.
And it's only a small amount.
Yeah.
Very small.
Yeah, okay, so that answers that. Councillor Ler, you have-
Yeah, short one. I mean, this relates to the question I asked earlier. It's based on the 3, column 3.
Yeah.
The allocation of numbers, it says 40% will be in KNC, 60% Westminster.
Yeah.
Is their contribution more than ours?
Yes. Yeah, so they spend more on the service because they have more children in need.
It's always prorated.
It's always proportional, yeah. It used to be Westminster and KNC, the split was 50-50, but we did a review of the service and it's 60-40.
Good answer.
Yeah, two. One of them is what I was asking about earlier, the youth funding team. Are we just doubling up, giving somebody double the work? And the other one is about the Notting Hill Gate Library. It's been closed for a year. Is it under works now? Or are we actually heading for something unspeakable?
Okay, so in relation to the first point around the youth offending service, we only have 35 young offenders open to the service at the moment. And we think that with the amount we get from the Youth Justice Board and what we put into the service, we've got a lot of provision there, and we think that that's a realistic saving that we can make based on the numbers of children that we're working with. In relation to the Notting Hill Library, there's a whole programme of work around completing the condition surveys of the buildings that we're responsible for across the council, in order to develop a prioritisation plan of where we put our resource.
So no, this is, yes.
So I don't have the timescales to hand around.
It's not under works now, and we're just removing their staff. It doesn't look good, does it?
It's not open right now, and
closed for a year.
It's been closed at some time,
and it's under review. And obviously, you know what people are going to be saying locally is that the council is planning to close it altogether forever.
They're reviewing the cost. They're reviewing the cost of it and then having to put it in the capital programme. So it's where it will sit in what we've budgeted.
No, I understand. It's just taking me a year. It seems to be a long time. This is what, you know.
Yeah, no. And we think because of the time it's taking, we know that the capital costs associated with the repairs at Notting Hill Library, it's going to be a lot. So it's going to take some time to do it. It's the intention to do that, but whilst it's not open, you know, we can make a saving on the staff who have been managing that library.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else on Appendix 3?
Yes.
Sorry, David.
Sarah, the largest single number is 300.
Yes.
We send transport.
Yes.
This accounts for almost exactly 25%.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you talk about it and how robust is it? Because if that is generous in your
yes
in what you think you can achieve, then it actually has a big effect on everything. So can you just expand and justify?
Of course. So where we've created more local placements, actually the SEND transport cost has come down.
Yeah.
So that's realistic on our projections of more local placements and the uptake of the transport, the cost of transport.
Was that primarily about the
Queensland,
yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it now, but it's going through evolution of name
Yes.
and management. But that is a once it's achieved as a 300,000 saving, that's per annum. So
Yes,
that's to be built into the
Yep.
system.
And that's already being achieved in the current
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
So
It's a real saving.
that
It's
is
getting rid of need of transport.
Yes.
It's designing it out
Yes,
system,
exactly.
making a capital investment.
Yep.
So it was
That's
an
been
investment
part of
to
the
say.
work that we've been doing in schools for them to reduce the high needs block and reduce the deficit.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, comes back to early intervention
Yeah.
and making sure we've got the right provision locally.
Do you have a parallel saving for the progression towards, I know that there can be some questions on this in different directions, but where it's worked well for a nursery to be moved into a primary school, presumably that helps save some costs. But
Not on our budget, it doesn't.
Well, if you look on the budget, there's a lot of.
We've got a line where we're passing some of the nurseries back to the.
Because they aren't full, so the places aren't full.
Yeah, but that once we've done that, that will be it. We
Yeah.
don't have any more.
So I think that helps manage the nursery's budget. So when it might not impact on the council's general fund, it helps them balance their budget. So as we've seen at St Anne's, where they've moved into a primary school, they have been able to manage their costs more.
Yeah.
But
that's their budget.
That's their
That's their budget, it's not
Yeah.
ours.
certainly
This is about-
in a couple of cases, I've also noticed that the Ofsted assessment has improved the outcomes dramatically.
Yeah.
It means you don't have GDPR between nursery
Yeah.
and school anymore,
Yeah.
primary school anymore. You know, continuity of curriculum, knowledge of the child, early interventions, all those sort of
Yes,
things.
but at the same time, that's a governor's decision, not a council.
Exactly, it's
decision.
not,
So
it's
that
not, it's not a
we
sensible
can't
council.
assume
Yeah.
more, and we
Well, I
heard.
think, Pretty, you wanted to ask a question as to whether this, you had a question on,
Oh, yes, so the nurseries, we were just talking about it, discussing it, from the school forum. There was quite a strong opposition from the lady who represented the nurseries of not wanting to join.
That was
you know,
Chelsea, yeah, nursery, yeah. I
So,
think she spoke for all the nurseries,
Yes,
yes, but
she
it was particularly, she's in a particularly vulnerable position.
so,
So-
and then, you know, and then
so
again.
would it be fair to say that it's not a one size fits all
Yeah,
situation?
exactly.
Yes.
And where it works really well. Where it doesn't work,
Yeah.
it's not going to be, not be easy to do.
No, I think what we sought to try and say, and I'm not sure if it came across well, is that there may be some capacity in some primary or other schools to support them and find alternatives. But like anything, it has to go out to consultation. It takes time. You have to bring everybody on board before any changes can be made. So I don't think it's anything that's going to impact this year's budget.
No,
that's
it's
for
not,
sure.
exactly right. Yeah, it's 26, 27.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we're on, still on Appendix 3 savings proposals. Any other questions people want to raise on that? No? Let's move on to Appendix 4. Which is capital. Any questions on that? So if I could ask, actually, the refurbishment of family house at Cheney, the intention there is to spend, I looked at 2 million on that, on some refurbishment. Is that to provide a long-term facility there?
Yes.
Yes, it's the family hub.
And it will also involve partners like NHS
Yes.
and BTS and such like.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's been in the pipeline for some time.
Yeah.
And it's been knocked back, and now it is in the capital programme, and this is very exciting.
Oh, I've just got one question. Why does the build project that's going on at All Saints not feature in this little?
And what was in the last?
Because this is in the current,
Decided,
yes, it's done.
it's
No,
already,
no,
it's
it's
already
in
agreed.
the process, it's in the
Yes,
process.
right,
So
yeah. As long
it's
as
a
it
new-
comes in within the
absolutely.
budget,
Yes.
yes, right, sorry.
Yes,
Where are the greening of schools? That comes from a separate.
that's
in a
in a
different
separate
budget.
budget.
Chair, may I just, sorry, I missed a point. So, Sarah, on Appendix 3, actually very brief, the library system, the procurement, every
Yes.
time I hear systems, it always
Yes.
worries me slightly. It can be sort of, bottomless pit. So is that realistic?
Yes, it is.
It
Yeah,
is.
it's all costed out.
It's all costed.
Absolutely.
Okay, and there's no
No,
ongoing,
no, that's
and
a
it's functioning,
real figure.
right, okay, and it's an external
And-
system.
And it's a better system than what we've got right now.
There's the maintenance cost, all that, everything.
And with that, it's all factored in, and that is our saving.
So if I could just chest sum up, I think that there's a lot in this paper. First of all, well done for addressing the
Yeah.
transformations side. I think that's a very substantial piece of work. I'd like to chop a couple of things out of the summary, which is in the sense that I think that
Will, might I ask a couple of
Oh,
questions?
sorry, pardon
I
me.
don't know if this is the time, or were you going to come to me anyway?
No, I asked you the meeting. You said you didn't know, so you're putting your hand
You
up.
know that.
Please do, Mary, please.
So I have two questions. One is in paragraph 1.22, there are quite an
Can you say the
extensive.
page, because there's a bundle up on the number.
On 22, I don't know what.
Page
paragraph
17.
number.
Yeah, page 17 on top.
Page 17.
Yeah.
There's quite an extensive list of overspends this year amounting to 900,000, which handily were offset by some savings.
Yeah.
But which of those are one-off and which aren't? And the ones that aren't one-off, have they been built into the new budget?
The majority have, but also we are relying on the social care grant funding, which we now understand is continuing into the new year. So that means we'll still be able to use part of, because we're
But still, they should be shown as growth if you're building them into the base budget, shouldn't
Not-
they?
not while we've got grant that's covering it, because we don't need growth. That's not, we've got the grant that's covering that cost, so we don't need to cover any cost. We've got a grant covering it.
Because it's a hypothecated plan.
No, it's definitely coming for next year, and we are expecting it to continue for the foreseeable future. Obviously, we don't know that for sure.
That's
If the grant,
440 grand.
Yes,
It's about 900 grand of overspending. spending, sorry, 900,000, I'm stopping so.
yes, and so part of that is the part of it is the £1 million growth, because obviously that's part of the growth that's already materialised in terms of the numbers, but then there's the further growth in future years as well. And I mean, there are others that no doubt we'll be trying to manage in the year next year as well. So, for instance, the shortfall on the library's income, we'll be trying to cover that. I should let Sarah answer. I'm speaking on behalf of Sarah.
No. Yeah, I mean, so children with disability placements, we're starting to bring those costs down. Staffing pressures, again, we're starting to bring those costs down. You know, we've been very fortunate that we have had a grant to cover the overspends that we're projecting, but we are gradually bringing those costs down in order not
But
to.
are you
be saying
bringing them
right
down
now,
enough so that you don't have to include them in the coming year's budget? Are you bringing them down quickly enough to not include them, any growth for them in the budget?
I
mean, I don't need to put you
no.
on the spot, but
It's
a serious question.
it's a really important question.
I'd be happy to have an answer afterwards.
Okay.
You know.
I'm quietly confident. I can't be 100%.
I think
confident.
Mary suggested a very good solution to
Of
give you
course.
time to go away and consider it.
Of
You could
course.
provide that
Yep.
through Ofsted as
Yep.
a supplementary
Thank
piece
you.
of information. But
And there was a second question.
so can I just finish?
Yeah, please do. Sorry.
But just to say that where you don't know, there's a risk. I think even if you have an objective and a realistic prospect to bring it down, if there's a risk, having a risk identified would be useful.
Okay. I mean, in our short breaks service, we've always been overspending. We have brought that overspend right down.
Yeah.
So, but you know, that's very helpful. Thank you.
And my second question was about contingency, which wasn't really a question for you, but well, it is. But now we've got a corporate contingency, not a service contingency, which is quite right. It's much more efficient, stops all sorts of hoarding. But what input do you as a director have had into what the corporate contingency should be? And I raise this because you particularly are vulnerable to this huge individual costs.
Yes.
And you have a very good, you know, you probably have a better sense than anyone in the centre of the council about what the likelihood is of the risk essentially of those. And the same goes for adult social care. They have the same issue as you do. And I suppose what I'm seeking is some comfort that you're feeding in very firmly into the centre, because it tends to stick around 5 million contingency, but is that enough?
So we do input into that contingency, particularly around legal costs, where we have extraordinary cases that take us overseas and require significant legal intervention. The costs can be extortionate. So we have said, you know, we need to rely on the corporate capital reserves for those costs because they're not predictable and they're.
It should be the corporate capital reserves. There should be the corporate reserve.
Corporate reserve, sorry, is my.
We also have conversations with corporate finance based on our quarterly monitor position and what the risks are. So we have certainly had discussions recently about the increasing cost of placements, and that therefore, you know, we need to make sure that there's enough for children's and adults, because it's all the finance that meet with the director. So yes, we have certainly had input and consideration about the, you know, corporate contingency is part of the process at this time.
Thank you. Sorry, I'll finish now. Will you be glad?
Thank you very much, Keith. I wanted to say that we've identified exclusions as an area that we ought to come back to, but that will take up an A5 on the work plan. I would propose that we now agree the recommendation that, as I put out earlier in this meeting, that the example we've seen in FCS of achieving transformational savings over a number of years whilst preserving or enhancing the quality of service with a clear link to the council plan, implementation through a budget process, and that actually reflects the children and young person's plan, and then takes it through the budgets and transformation process, and then measures it under the dashboard and also external accreditation on standards of service. But that, there's always room for improvement, but the demonstrable and fact-based, substantiated progress that you have made, combined with the realization of the consequent costs for children and ASC of not doing some of these services, because I think that if we start getting into an analysis, that I know that other councillors want to do of what is statutory and what's not statutory, if we get into that, you could well have a situation, as I see it, where a children's early intervention is not statutory.
Yeah.
We cut that,
Yeah.
and it then produces
Yeah,
a
that's
need
right.
in ASC where we do have a statutory.
Yeah.
So actually, we could force ourselves to have to solve a problem of our own making.
Yeah.
Well, and before adult social care, you'd go straight into the statutory social
Yeah.
care system,
Yeah.
and it's much
I mean,
more costly.
I said we shouldn't discuss cases, but one case that did come up was of a young child, for £2,000 worth of oracy training at age 2. The professional involved projected a fantastic sum per year that was saved as a result. Now, whether that's true or not.
Yeah.
But I think those conversations have to happen between FCS and ASC. One of the recommendations that we're going to propose to the committee now is that we make a specific recommendation that the methodology that you've developed of children's and young persons plan policy reflecting the council's plan, that's the intent.
Yeah.
It fed into the implementation, which is your budget making process and resource requirement, etc. Now the measuring for KPIs, both internal through dashboards, but external through Ofsted and other bodies. That methodology is one that's proven here and can always be improved, but it can be proven here and should be recommended as a method to be used by other directorates in the council. So that's one recommendation. So I put that to the committee. Are you happy with?
Yeah, I don't actually see it written down here.
No, it's not. The word is, what I propose is that we agree the principle of this recommendation, but with officers, with the help of FCS officers, as well, with our support team, we word that up into a properly formed recommendation. We circulated amongst ourselves to agree upon the wording of it. And what I'm asking for now is an approval in principle for the fact that we recognise what's happened and that we propose that as a methodology for other directorates. Now the recommendation goes, if we agree, it goes to OSC, to budget working group to look at, and in parallel to that, the leadership team, the lead member, which is Catherine, to argue with Collins within the leadership team. So that would be the proposal that I'm making now in principle. And with your leave, I would work with officers to come up with a properly worded proposal that according to that principle. We then, if we all agree, we put it to OSC and the lead member and the leadership team.
Okay.
Thank you.
Because it's a structural way of doing things that has got factual proof, and £6 million a year coming out of this whilst improving the service. I think exactly what the objectives of the council plan are at the moment. Be the best council. So I think that's good. So are we agreed with that?
Yes, agreed.
Thank you.
I abstain from that for now. I'm really not sure where this is going.
Where it's going is that we would try.
No, I understand the process that you suggested.
Okay.
I don't see.
When you say abstain,
Well, everybody's agreeing, and I'm saying.
No, we're not agreeing the detail of it. And the paper will come to you, and you'll have the opportunity of saying, I think this is right or wrong in this detail. But the principle is, do we want to have more efficient council services that enable better service to residents and by efficiency and dealing with with financial headwinds,
No, I understand.
which is
what
the
you're saying.
fundamental of the transformational process, and which was agreed by this, by the budget working group this time last, but not this time, in February of last year. So that's the where it's going. And what the intent is to come into a practical process that backs up the process in principle that was agreed by the whole of the council unanimously in February of last year. So that's where it's going. So in principle, I just hoped that this would be an easy one, but you can reserve your reservation at the moment, that's fine. We'll put the detailed paper out and come back on that. The council unanimously, the leadership team unanimously,
I
OSC,
understand where you're coming from.
yeah, OSC,
Yeah.
OSC unanimously, the budget working group, OSC, the leadership team, and the full council all unanimously said we have to do transformations. We have now chapter and verse, proven track record over 3 years, adding up to £6 million a year embedded in the process. If we hadn't done it, we'd have a budget cap of 6 million.
You don't have to explain it over and over again. I understand your point completely. I'm just preserving my judgment. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll progress with that. I think in terms of the detailed questions challenging the budget, it's been recorded in the minutes by officers. The minutes will come round for you to check out on. I think that substantially, we had a budget proposal here that works and hits the objectives. I think there are outstanding questions going forward that might be further examined, and it might be interesting to get a fuller response from FCS as to what the implications both for FCS budget and adult social care budget would be if you weren't able to do either the existing transformations or not, you weren't able to keep some of the services going in the future. That ends up in a serious discussion between adult social care and FCS working together. So I think that I would ask for if you could give us a bit more information on that as an information paper, and then we can consider it in future whether we want to make further recommendations.
Okay.
Okay, after this item paper, are we happy? Finished?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you for the.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anita, and thank you, Anita.
Okay, we've got one more item to do, which is the work programme, I believe. Yep. I don't think we need to make any changes, except that we did say that we would. I think there were a couple of exclusions was one that we'd look at when we wanted a further report.
Yeah, just to point out, so at the meeting on the 9th of July, we looked at the inclusion strategy, which included the exclusions that we had watching from Alston. Yeah, so we have looked at it this cycle already, but
I think one of the frustrations that we had, and we understood the reason why, the data that was included in that report was, if you like, retrospective by at least a year. Could you, as officers, talk with our professional colleagues at FCS? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
As to what timing they would suggest for next report. Obviously, if it goes beyond this corporate year, it's a proposal from this committee to a future committee. But also how they might close the gap in terms of more current information. It's a shame that Amanda's not here, but Amanda is a strong proponent of the fact that people who are governors and heads of schools are much more up to date in terms of that issue because they have to deal with it day by day, week by week. So maybe one of the things we could do in that situation was to actually get evidence from one or two practitioners in schools. I mean, I think it'd be very useful to have a couple of school heads addressing that subject. Because
Actually, there are some schools have teachers with specific responsibility for it.
Yeah.
So you have them rather than head teachers.
Well, that would be worked out, may well be. But the point I'm making is that they would have real-time data because they have to deal with that. As you were saying earlier on, that these are real issues day to day, and they're getting a report that's a year out of date because that's the accredited figures. It's probably the right way to do it under one paradigm, but on the other hand, it doesn't inform us in terms of assurances with regard to what's happening at the moment. So getting up-to-date data, the way to do it would be to asked school teachers to come and hear it if they were willing to come and talk to us. And whether that's through Schools Forum or whether it's through, I don't know how we would choose who we would take evidence from, and then we could work on that. But certainly school exclusions and the support that's needed, both in terms of early interventions and then later on, the sort of thing you were talking about, is something that we can come back to. Now, it may not be possible to do this before the end of this year, and therefore we might have to make it as proposals next year. But I think it's something this committee ought to have in its id going forward. So that's one on work program. Is there anything else on work program? There's one that's trying to.
Yeah.
So sorry, Tom.
Yeah, I raised this last time. I can't remember what the answer was. I was just keen to get some more information on how well we do on adoptions.
Yep.
And our adoption rates and.
Yeah, that will come in the key performance information in February.
Right.
So
Okay.
Small number from memory, Tom. Very small number.
Yeah.
Can you?
And is that? Sorry, we can discuss that.
Can you just clarify, Bella, the information we're getting as written up in the work program, the performance data is on a very restricted range of topics.
well, it's to include data around adoption rates. We'll get all of the usual.
So we'll get the fortunately,
Yeah.
what do they call it? Dashboard. Yeah. So we get the whole range, but it's specifically to include that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Councillor.
I know you covered the exclusion, and I think Ben is right. We had that topic on back in July. It's not far, but it's a real pressing issue in terms of what we're hearing from children, families, the schools, and I suggest, if possible, not only from the schools, we also got a service commissioned by the bar, which is Secretary James, who will provide legal advice for both children and parents, if they can be involved in that process of the briefing the committee and the work they've done, and the issue they're facing.
Okay, so the subject would be the sort of current experience and practice of school exclusions, in addition to any update that can come from the FCS officers, that we get a more real-time picture rather than just the reputation.
And some, I know KAA, they have an inclusion unit. I don't know how broad it is, but they're trying to keep children in school.
Yeah.
That's obviously dependent on how many teaching assistants they've got, obviously. But I think they've carried out that model in Hounslow for quite some time.
Yeah.
So it would be interesting to know how, obviously they need the space and they need the resources, human and financial. But in inclusion school just means that they're taking out some classes, but they're still within the school.
So
Their friends and so on, which
I think that's a good suggestion. It's not just exclusion; it's the inclusions work, and it's the early intervention inclusion work, which I believe happens, starting off right away in nursery.
Absolutely.
Because it's socialisation, ready for school, all those things that engage the pupils in their school and make them happy and ready to evolve.
We were talking that the effect exclusion will have on the child progression to education.
Yeah.
And we really want to get, I don't know where to get this. If the child has been excluded for 6 weeks or more, do we have the data, their performance before exclusion, and their performance level after they come back to the school, and how that will have an effect on their progression to year 10, year 11 GCSE.
Now, we didn't get into the data, which is part of the question, but what we did have, when the Constant head came, he started to talk about that. He said, a child was having difficulties in school and help the child to bring them out of school for 6 weeks in a different establishment and then bring them back in again, if it's done well, properly. And then you're saying, what is the data that proves that?
Absolutely.
And also the issue on managed moves, because often, as I said, the parents are pressurised to accept a managed move that doesn't go on the child's record. They just move schools, but that's not on the school's record either. So that's a way of avoiding the figures looking worse. than
Sometimes
they
it
are.
can be very effective, sometimes it can be not very effective. So
Well, I know,
it's a
exactly, so
question of
how
whether it's
can we,
done well.
but I think we should know the numbers of managed moves.
Okay, well,
Maybe they're good
I
things,
think
but
that,
they may not always be.
officers have got a few notes on this and we can work it up as a proposal and then put it to the committee as to whether we want to do something this year or whether we want to make this a proposal for next year. Right. Okay. Any other points on work programme?
Just the report asks you to agree the next meeting. So in your briefing note, you'll study the this option. Following this that we're proposing, so not nothing.
Yeah, there we go. Just next meeting, 4th February. Local safeguarding children partnership annual report. Ofsted inspection report, that's Ofsted or FCS, it's not Ofsted in any particular school.
No, it's still
It's FCS,
Yeah.
North Kensington Social Justice Archive and key performance information, which as you've confirmed, Bella, is the whole panoply of their data, not just the ones that are mentioned in the list. Okay. Are we happy with that? Yep. Okay. Thank you very much.
I'd rather do less. Probably.
Well,
Okay.
there was a question which I raised about whether local safeguarding children partnership annual report should include mental health and online safety. And the officers said that they didn't have the capability of doing that through this report.
Go to the following one.
Yeah. So I could follow up on that. Could you go from the Luke and Bella, could you go back to the lady officer who made that?
Jane, yeah.
Yeah, Jen.
We've got mental health on 8th of May.
Yeah.
So
I think the thing was that with online safety, it's a much bigger area than just the safeguarding area, so it would be better as a standalone topic that we could
so
look
we've
at.
got space for it to make.
Yeah, we should do. I believe so. So
Okay,
two
that
items.
That answered that question.
Yeah.
Okay, so are we happy with that? Are we simplified? Yeah. Right, then safeguarding into 2 parts. Okay. Okay. End of meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Let's know how we managed this.